Look, I love home educating my children. I've home educated them since they were born, but sometimes it is really hard, and I don't feel like people feel like they can open up enough about this online because of the judgment, because people are immediately going to say, well, put your kids in school then. So this is a video for anyone who is considering pulling their kids out of school, or for home educators who feel like the weight of the world is on their shoulders and they don't know where to turn. Hopefully you'll feel a little bit more seen after this video. So this is all about the struggles of home education. Now, I've been home educating for nearly 15 years. My eldest is nearly 15. I've also got a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I wouldn't change it for the world, but there are some things that I feel like people need to know that they might face when they start home educating. I feel like it's only fair if I'm sharing all the positives of home ed, and there are so many. I also share the other side of it, so you know what to expect. So here are some of the challenges that home educators face on a day-to-day basis. So obviously there are a mixture of practical and mental challenges. So I will start with the practical. It can be very difficult to work and home educate. So most of us need to do paid work in some form. And so if you are going from a situation where your child is in school and you've been using that time to work, it can be tricky when you then pull them out and you have to find a whole new way of doing that. Now, there are many ways that home educators manage to work and home educate. Some people do shift work, they work around a partner, they use childcare, they might only work evenings or weekends. A lot of us work online, and a lot of us have had to change career or pick a career that means that we can work around home educating our children, like myself. I quite like the phrase, you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. And so if you really want to home educate and work, you can, but it might not be work that you originally wanted to do. It might not be work that you train for or that you love, because unfortunately, when it comes to home education, that really dictates everything else that goes on with your life. And I only feel it is fair to be upfront about that and just share that with you. Now, because I've built a career online over the past 15 years, I do have resources, courses and workshops to share with you, different ways that you can work and home educate, and I will link them below. I absolutely appreciate that not everyone is going to want to or can work online. It is just the way that I have found works best for a lot of home educators, and so that's what I share about on here. Another practical struggle that home educators have is that you are with your kids a lot of the time. I'm not going to say 24/7 because we often use groups or some childcare, but you're with your children a lot, and that can be quite stressful for parents if they want time to themselves, and it can also be quite a challenge to get one-on-one time if you have more than one child. I will say, and I've always said, that I feel that when children are happy and relaxed at home, they are easier to be around, and so you probably won't feel the same need to get away from your child to have your own time, but it is perfectly natural to want a break as a parent, and that can be challenging to find when you are home educating. Now, home educators get around this in a few ways. They obviously might have family nearby or friends who can take their children. They might use paid childcare, and a lot of home educators use drop-off groups or home ed kid swaps. So basically, it is home educating friends who you know are going to be around in the day, and you take turns at watching each other's children. Well, I am going to put it out there, this might not happen for you. So do take this into account when you are thinking about home educating. Another practical struggle is the house. My house is never tidy. My house is never tidy. This bit is tidy because there is mess there, and everywhere else in the house. But there is always something going on. I love this about home education, but I don't love that it constantly feels like there is something to clean or tidy. And so if you struggle with this, it is very much worth thinking about the organization of your home and anything else that you might need to make it bearable for you. For me personally, I go by the motto, I can have an immaculate house or I can have happy, thriving children, and I pick the latter. But that's not to say I don't want both. Another practical struggle that home educators have is navigating curriculum and exams. Now, the law is that you do not need to follow a curriculum. You don't have to do the national curriculum or any other curriculum, but it can be tricky if you do want to plug into the exam system, for example, for GCSEs or A-levels. There are some fantastic resources about navigating exams as a home educator. There is a really good wiki website. I will link that below. There is also a Facebook group called Home Education Exams and Alternatives. All of this will be linked below because I want you to have the best possible chance of navigating it with ease. But I will say, as a home educating parent whose children are now getting to GCSE stage, I do feel a little bit overwhelmed. We are getting there, I know the plan, but it still does feel like a huge weight of responsibility. I know that other home educating friends with older children have also felt this, so I just wanted to say there is a point where your children become teenagers and you do start thinking more about practical steps towards the next stage of their future, that it does feel a little bit like, oh my God, this is getting serious. There's also the practical concern of paying for exams. Now, one of my children is applying for college and she will go off and do college and her exams are included in that. But if we wanted to do other exams, we would have to pay for them privately at a local exam centre. So you do need to factor that into your home educating costs. Juggling children of different ages is also a practical struggle that some home educators find. I found that there are generally 3 different ways around this. I would love to hear what other home educators are doing. The first one is that you do one-on-one time with each child. So if your children are old enough to get on with some activities independently, you can sit with each one and do something with them. I say sit with them, you might want to go out. It depends on the age and the maturity of your children. But basically I call this method divide and conquer. The second option, and this works particularly well I find if you have younger children, is to do an activity and adapt it slightly for each child. So let's say you were looking at the solar system. Older children might be doing a more in-depth project. They might be watching YouTube videos. They might have an online lesson. They might be doing a workbook. Younger children might be colouring in, doing Play-Doh, crying in the corner, destroying the kitchen, whatever. But generally, if you want to get the children together, you just need to adapt the activity a little bit for each age. And the third way is using drop-off groups. Now, we found that this works incredibly well for our family. It means that the children get a little bit of time away from each other so that they can come back together and argue after group. But it also means that they have their own friends and their own friendship groups, which I feel is really, really healthy for them. And it means they can be their own person and do things at a level that suits them rather than being in mixed age groups all the time. So those are the practical struggles, and now I'll go into some of the, I guess, mental struggles that home educators have. This is something that I definitely have struggled with, and I know a lot of my home ed friends have, and that is just not being understood. You are rejecting probably the biggest structure in our society that most people buy into, and that is the school system. And so most people are not going to understand that decision. They also might feel quite attacked. They might feel like you are judging them for sending their children to school, and so this can cause them quite difficult conversations. This doesn't particularly bother me anymore, but I will say that it's just slightly energy sapping if you meet someone new and you say that you home educate, because generally they'll ask where your kids go to school. You're sort of bracing yourself for a reaction and you never know what that reaction is. I am quite confident, I'm not shy, but I know that other people with different personality types find this difficult, particularly if it's coming from family and friends. And what I will say is really clear, really firm boundary setting is going to be absolutely essential if you don't want this to become quite a big struggle in your home education journey. People need to know around you that they do not have the right to criticize your parenting when you have done your absolute best to make the right choice for your child, particularly if they are doing it in a rude or condescending manner. Another mental struggle, and I definitely feel this particularly as I'm a solo parent, is the weight of the responsibility. Now, legally, every single parent is legally responsible for their child's education. However, most parents choose to outsource this to school. We do not have that safety net. It's a false sense of security, but we can't blame a school if things go wrong, whereas most parents can. And so it is very much obvious that everything is on you. It is what it is. I don't really know what to say about this one. I suppose if people are going to blame you for everything with your child, they also have to give you all the credit when things go right. But to be honest, I don't want either. I'm not bothered what people think. I do just feel a very huge responsibility for getting my children every resource and everything that they need to fulfill the potential, and I suppose take every opportunity that they possibly can. I suppose every single parent feels this anyway. Another struggle that I've heard home educating parents talk about is guilt. I certainly feel this. This might be because you don't feel like you're giving enough one-on-one time to each child, or you can't afford for them to go to many drop-off groups or have these amazing resources that other people are showing online. There are a million different ways that parent guilt shows up, and I think it is doubly so for home educators because we don't have the resources of school that our children are benefiting from. Now, of course, we don't have any of the downsides of school that our children are suffering from either, but that doesn't really help. I think that parent guilt is just there. As soon as your child is born, you're going to want the absolute best for them, and nothing that we do is ever going to feel good enough because they deserve the world. Unfortunately, this is just something that I feel we're all going to have to live with forever. If anyone has found a way to navigate parent guilt, I would love to know, so please do leave it in the comments. And the last thing that I feel home educating parents struggle with a lot is confidence. This breaks my heart, especially from parents who are considering home education. They often say to me, I'm not smart enough, I didn't do well at school, I feel like I'm going to fail them. And my honest reaction is, well, first of all, how is school working out for them? Because often really badly. And secondly, if you went to school for 12 years and you came out feeling like you were stupid, you failed your exams, and you don't feel like you're smart enough to raise your own children without school, then I don't feel that school actually did you much of a service. Every single parent pretty much raises their child fairly solo until the age of 5. I mean, I know nursery or preschool might come into play, but we are solely responsible for facilitating all that until the age of 5 for our child. And that is the key time when our kids are developing an absolute rate of knots. There are so many important things they learn during that time, but suddenly when our children get to the age of 5, we don't feel capable of raising them by ourselves anymore. And I feel this is really something that I would love to change in society, because you absolutely are. It doesn't mean you do it alone, it doesn't mean you do it without resource or professional help, but I would encourage parents to question if a system that you have gone through has left you feeling stupid, inadequate, like you're not smart, and like you're not capable of raising your own child without that same system that might give them the same result. There is probably something up there. I would also encourage you to ask your family and friends, if you do feel like this, what your talents and skills are, because you do have talents and skills, everyone does, and it is very likely, if you feel like this, that school simply didn't recognize them. It might be that you're an amazing caregiver, or you're very good with your hands and a vocational pathway was more your thing. About 50% of the people I know who are conventionally successful, who are earning a lot of money and comfortable, they did very well in school, but the other 50% did really badly in school and they had to make their own way. So doing well at school is absolutely not a sign of intelligence necessarily, or that you're going to do particularly well in the future. And I just wish this was more acknowledged and accepted in our society. So those are the struggles that home educators often face. I am sure there are many, many more. I've asked on my Instagram for people to share theirs. So if people do share, I will have put them up on this video. I would love to hear what you struggle with as a home educator and any ways to navigate it, or ways that you have found to get around the struggles that I've put up in this video. If you've enjoyed this video, please do subscribe. I am uploading every single week on Mondays at 6 p.m. and thank you very much for watching.